Welcome to the weekly deep dive for March 9th to 15th, 2026. I'm Jason, and I am pumped to be here. This week's top stories paint a picture of opposing forces, the rapid and sometimes reckless drive of big tech to maximize speed and efficiency against the slow, meticulous traditions and practices of medicine and psychiatry. First, the top 5 stories of the week. Number 1, big funding news in AI. Advanced Machine Intelligence, the new lab led by Yann LeCun, a vocal critic of the large language model AI structure, announces a $1 billion raise to build so-called world models. Health startup Nabla, which creates AI scribes, is lined up to use that tech early on. If these models deliver a more predictable, auditable behavior that today's LLM models cannot, they could make agentic health tools safer and easier to regulate. That's a potentially major shift for clinical automation and is definitely worth watching closely. A PBS NewsHour report summarizes the closing arguments from the landmark Los Angeles bellwether trial, where a 20-year-old plaintiff alleges that exposure to social media platforms addicted her and materially worsened her depression and suicidal thoughts, while Meta and YouTube counter that her vulnerabilities predated platform use. To note, TikTok and Snapchat have already settled out of court. The jury's decision, whether to find the company's design choices a substantial factor in her harm, could shape thousands of similar suits and push major changes in platform regulations, especially around design features for young users. Number 3. People are increasingly forming emotional bonds with chatbots, and clinicians are taking note. These relationships can feel comforting, but they also risk fostering synthetic attachment, blurring boundaries, and changing how people seek help. For mental health practice, that means we need clear expectations about what chatbots can and cannot do, stronger guidance and regulations on safe use, and more research into long-term effects before we scale them as therapy additives. And number 4. A new systematic review examines how technologies like VR, the metaverse, deepfakes, and chat apps affect adolescents. In terms of well-being and religious identity, the review finds mixed effects. These platforms can definitely support connection and learning, but they can also amplify risks like bullying, identity disruption, and new forms of harassment. As with many new technologies in the past, the issue is not so much with the technology itself, but how it is being used, incentivized, and regulated. The takeaway for clinicians and policymakers is that digital youth interventions and education needs to be both protective by design and have careful outcome evaluation. And number 5. Lithium is a powerful mood stabilizing drug used for many different psychiatric disorders, including bipolar disorder. To reduce lithium-related kidney risk, clinicians should use routine eGFR monitoring and conservative dosing strategies. These include immediate release lithium, nighttime dosing, and maintenance levels no higher than 0.6 to 0.8 milliequivalents per liter. New evidence suggests eGFR should be interpreted with age-adjusted cutoffs rather than a fixed threshold of 60, which may help avoid overdiagnosing chronic kidney disorder in older adults and underdiagnosing CKD in younger adults. Let's sit with that for a moment. How are you feeling? I want you to try and name however you're feeling, and as best you can, just let those emotions go. Now for the deep dive. AI health bots are moving from novelty to industry. In just the last few months, 3 major tech players have made serious moves into consumer healthcare. Amazon Health's AI with One Medical, Microsoft's Copilot, and OpenAI's ChatGPT Health. All 3 are selling some version of the same future. Your medical records, wearable data, labs, prescriptions, and health questions all flowing into one conversational interface that helps you understand what is happening and figure out what to do next. And on the surface, that is great and extremely valuable. Most people don't need more random health information or tests. They need help making sense of the information that they already have and surviving the administrative obstacle course that is modern healthcare. But the real question is not whether health bots sound useful in theory. The real question is, what can they actually do? Where do they fail? And what does that mean for healthcare? Let's start with Amazon. Amazon's Health AI, built with One Medical, the doer, is not just a chatbot that answers questions. It's designed to do things: explain medical records, help manage prescriptions, and connect users to One Medical providers through messaging, video, or in-person care. Amazon says it started in the One Medical app and is now expanding to the Amazon website and app. Prime members can get up to 5 free direct message consultations for common conditions. That is Amazon's biggest strength: real integration with care pathways. And this is not just an information bot. It's a care navigation tool tied to appointments, providers, and pharmacy logistics. If it works well, it could reduce friction in routine care in ways that generic chatbots simply cannot. For mental health care, that could matter for medication renewals, follow-up questions, and getting to a real clinician faster. Amazon also says the system uses a multi-agent structure: a main conversational agent, task-specific sub-agents, auditors, and escalation agents that hand off to people when humans need it. Also, Amazon says it can personalize responses using health history and, with permission, purchasing context. That means this product sits right on the boundary between healthcare and commerce. And when Amazon says we'd like to personalize your care, some people may reasonably hear we'd like to literally know everything there is about you. So Amazon looks strongest when the goal is care navigation plus action. And its biggest risk is that it lives at the very blurry line between medical help and platform expansion. Next, we have Microsoft Copilot Health, the organizer. This feels different. Where Amazon is building an action bot, Microsoft is building more of a health organizer and interpreter. Microsoft says Copilot Health can pull together data from more than 50 different wearable devices, health records from over 50,000 hospitals and provider organizations, and lab data from Function. It also connects to real-time provider directories, so users can search for clinicians by specialty, location, language, and insurance. Microsoft's pitch is not replace your doctor. It's more like show up to your doctor's appointment with all your health files in a coherent story. And for people with chronic illnesses, multiple specialists, or years of scattered medical records, just getting everything in one sequential picture is a huge step forward. Microsoft's other big strength is that it emphasizes trust and governance. It says Copilot Health is isolated from general Copilot, not used for model training, protected by additional privacy controls, and informed by an external panel of more than 230 physicians from 24 different countries. This is all really good. The problem is that, at least for right now, Copilot Health looks more convincing as a data integration layer than as a clinically proven decision tool. In other words, it may be very good at organizing information, but the harder question is whether it can reliably guide decisions when symptoms are urgent, confusing, or emotionally charged. And that is a much, much higher bar. So Microsoft looks the best when the goal is making fragmented health data usable. And its biggest open question is whether good organization turns into good judgment under pressure. And finally, our third bot is ChatGPT Health, the talker, which may feel the most familiar because it grows out of a chatbot that so many people use every day. And OpenAI says ChatGPT Health is a dedicated health space inside ChatGPT with added privacy protections, separate memory, and support for connected records and wellness apps like Apple Health, Function, and MyFitnessPal. Its biggest strength is obvious: conversation. It is the most natural chatbot of the three, and it can already explain complex information in plain language, summarize health information clearly, and help users prepare questions for appointments. That makes it especially strong for education, clarification, and preparation. But it also comes with the clearest warning signs so far. A Nature Medicine study found that when ChatGPT Health was tested on clinician written triage scenarios, it under triaged 52% of emergency cases. 52%. And in some cases, it suggested delayed care when an emergency care was actually needed. This is a serious problem because a system that can sound calm, clear, and intelligent while still being dangerously wrong is a recipe for disaster. And another Nature study found that when real people used ChatGPT Health, they did not make better health decisions than controls, like people just searching online. That suggested that the issue is not only what the model knows, it's how people interpret and use what it says. So ChatGPT Health looks the best when the goal is understanding and preparation. And its clearest weakness is that a very fluent interface can still make risky mistakes, especially in triage. Being articulate is not the same thing as being safe. Now, if we zoom out a little bit, these products are not identical. There are 3 different bets on what AI in healthcare should be. Amazon is betting on a health concierge, a bot that helps you do things and connect to care. Microsoft is betting on a health intelligence layer, a system that unifies your records, wearables, labs, and provider search info into one usable picture. And OpenAI is betting on the conversational companion, a familiar interface that helps you interpret, prepare, and navigate. And to be fair, each model has a real use case. The problem is that healthcare is not a normal software market. In SaaS, a delayed shipping update is a minor inconvenience. But in medicine, a delayed emergency recommendation can be catastrophic. That means the bar for safety should be set much higher depending on the field. My overall view is that AI health bots are probably here to stay. And that makes sense because they solve a real problem. Healthcare is confusing, fragmented, slow, and full of administrative friction. A well-designed health bot can reduce that friction, improve understanding, and help patients come into real medical conversations better prepared. That's the upside. But health bots should be treated less like digital doctors and more like layered tools. Right now, they are useful for education, record interpretation, and care preparation. They are not trustworthy enough to act like autonomous frontline medical decision makers. That is the distinction that matters the most. There's also a bigger question here. Now that AI companies have become dramatically better at coding and automation, are we watching the start of a much broader push into high-value sectors like healthcare, engineering, and law? Probably. But capability is not the same thing as diffusion. Healthcare, in particular, is slow to change for good reasons. Regulation, high stakes, professional norms, and a very, very low tolerance for failure. So even if AI is a generational technology, that does not mean it will instantly transform medicine. Healthcare may turn out to be less like consumer software and more like electronic health records. Huge promise, slow rollout, lots of friction, and everybody slightly more miserable for a while. And honestly, that may be the healthier outcome. Because when it comes to people's safety, this sensitive, slow adoption is not always a bug. Sometimes it is the last remaining safety feature. If there's one company and product I would be especially cautious about, it's Amazon. In 2025, Amazon settled a $2.5 billion lawsuit for allegedly enrolling people into Prime without consent and making cancellation confusing and difficult. Coupled with other privacy and consumer protection violations in the past, the harms have been numerous and methodical from this company. And when one company can potentially combine your purchase history, healthcare information, and your entertainment habits into one giant behavioral profile, even with formal protections in place, that concentration of personal data makes me definitely uneasy. The issue is not just whether a company says the right things about safety. The issue is whether the company has earned public trust to handle something this intimate. And more broadly, I think the burden of proof should shift. Consumers should not have to prove harm only after the damage is done. Companies building high stakes AI systems should have to prove safety before mass deployment. That is how we eventually regulated other dangerous industries. Not perfectly and not quickly, but by forcing companies to internalize the cost of failure instead of offloading it onto the public. Healthcare AI should be no different. So you may be wondering, what should people actually do about all this? First, caution patients about both the benefits and the unforeseen risks of these systems. Secondly, don't get swept up in the AI hype just because the interfaces and polish and the demos are impressive. Third, move slowly and deliberately when bringing these tools into practice. And finally, put pressure on lawmakers and regulators to create rules that hold AI companies accountable for the systems they build. Because the real issue here is not whether health bots can talk about health. They clearly can. The real issue is whether big tech can earn public trust, prove safety, and actually protect patients before asking to become the operating system for healthcare. That is the conversation that matters. This was Reimagining Psych. Thank you for the privilege of your attention. Hope to see you next Sunday.